Sergeant-Artilleryman Jack Thompson of the U.S. Marine Corps eagerly boarded a massive aircraft, thrilled to be heading home after nearly 6 years away. It had been that long since he last saw his beloved wife, Anna, and hugged his daughter, Sarah. As the plane ascended, Jack reflected on his life. He had met Anna back in 1997 at an event in Balboa Park, San Diego, while he was training at Camp Pendleton. They were both in line for ice cream when a child on roller skates accidentally knocked her down, causing her to drop her cone. Jack helped her up and insisted on buying her a new one. Her long red hair and sparkling green eyes captivated him, and he was smitten. She accepted his offer, and that day marked the beginning of their romance. They spent hours sharing stories, and by the end of the day, Jack knew she was the one he wanted to marry. Anna was studying for a business degree at San Diego State University, aiming to join her father's renowned investment firm, which had offices all over the country. Meanwhile, Jack was a corporal undergoing scout sniper training. He often spoke with pride about his military lineage, his father, a retired Marine who served in Vietnam, his grandfather, a World War II Marine, and his great-grandfather, a World War I veteran. The Thompson family had a deep-rooted history of service in the Marine Corps, participating in key conflicts throughout American history. "It's a family tradition I've always respected," Jack explained. "It's in our blood." Their relationship thrived until Jack received orders to deploy to Okinawa for a year. A month before he left, they discussed marriage. "I come from a traditional family," he told Anna, wanting to ask her father's permission to marry her. Her eyes lit up with a smile. That weekend, they drove to her parents' house in Los Angeles, where her parents offered them separate rooms. Her parents adored Jack, now a corporal. Her father, Richard Harrison, invited Jack into his study for a chat and offered him a drink, which Jack accepted. "So, young man," Richard asked, "what are your intentions with my daughter?" "Sir, I intend to marry her, with your blessing," Jack replied. Richard smiled and agreed. "You should know I'm preparing her to take over the family business," he noted. Jack understood. "I am also deeply involved in my family's legacy," he said. "I've heard," Richard responded. "Your family has produced some remarkable individuals. Do you plan to make a career in the Corps?" "Yes, sir, I do," Jack confirmed. "Our firm has offices nationwide. Anna and I have talked, and she's willing to move with me to stay together. We'll only be apart during deployments or long assignments like Okinawa. Your daughter is incredible, and I believe we can make it work. Yes, she can move with you for the first 10 to 15 years, but eventually, she'll need to be in Los Angeles to pursue her career. Can you manage that?" Richard asked. Jack nodded. "I'm a Marine, sir. We learn to adapt and overcome." Richard smiled and nodded. "When do you plan to marry?" "Anna will graduate when I return from Okinawa, so we thought it best to wait until then, if that's okay," Jack replied. "That's perfectly fine," Richard answered. "It gives us time to prepare." He handed Jack some documents. "Jack, both Anna and my wife care deeply for you," he said. "Anna values your companionship. I give you my blessing to marry her. Please review this document and sign if you agree." "What is it?" Jack asked. "It's a prenuptial agreement," Richard explained. "It's to protect Anna and her assets in case of divorce. I just want to safeguard my daughter. Many people are drawn to her because of her wealth." Jack felt a bit offended but understood the necessity of the agreement. He wanted to ensure fairness. "I'd like to have our lawyers at Pendleton review it, if that's all right," Jack said. Richard nodded. "I understand. My father always advised consulting a lawyer before signing anything. So let your lawyers look it over. We'll make changes if needed." The lawyers reviewed the agreement, which was a standard document to protect Anna's assets in case of divorce. It also specified that in the event of infidelity, the guilty party would receive no support and lose 70% of the marital assets. Jack's lawyer made adjustments to ensure it applied fairly to both spouses. Jack and Anna presented the revised document to Richard, who asked about the changes. "Well, my family owns a large ranch in West Texas, part of which is leased to oil companies," Jack explained. "The lawyer thought this would balance things out when I inherit it." "I understand," Richard replied. "That's acceptable." They finalized the paperwork, and life continued. That evening, during a family dinner, Jack proposed to Anna with a diamond ring. She accepted, hugging him joyfully as her parents applauded. The night before his deployment to Okinawa, Jack and Anna shared a tender moment. "What does Semper Fidelis mean?" she asked, seeing it on the Marine Corps emblem. "It's the Marine Corps motto," Jack explained. "It means, always faithful. It signifies honesty and loyalty, which are vital to me. Trust is everything." She propped herself up and gazed into his eyes. "I will always be faithful and loyal to you, Jack. I love you more than anything." He smiled and kissed her gently. "I will always be faithful and loyal to you, my love," he whispered. Jack's first stint in Okinawa was tough. He missed Anna terribly and spent his free time writing her letters and sending photos, avoiding the temptations of local girls. Anna sent him letters and postcards daily. When the year ended, Jack returned home. Anna's parents organized a grand wedding, even covering the cost of bringing Jack's parents from West Texas. Jack, now a sergeant, wore his dress uniform, and his fellow Marines from Pendleton served as ushers. After the ceremony, they walked under the Marine Corps Sword Arch and went on a honeymoon to Hawaii, courtesy of Anna's parents. Life seemed perfect. Jack re-enlisted in 2000 and was posted to the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. Their daughter, Sarah, was born in 2001, inheriting Anna's hair and eyes and Jack's features. Anna worked at her father's Washington office to keep the family together. In September 2001, terrorists attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, causing global shockwaves. A fourth plane crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back. Shortly after, Jack was called upon to use his sniper skills for a new mission. Anna understood the demands of Marine life. When Jack was deployed, she worked in Los Angeles and cared for Sarah. When he returned, she worked in the nearest office. Their strong bond kept them happy. Anna admired Jack's service and often expressed her gratitude. Jack, in turn, was proud of Anna's achievements at Whitman Holdings, making it more family-friendly. In 2008, Jack was stationed at Parris Island, South Carolina, as a drill instructor for 2 years. Anna worked in the company's Savannah office and attended all his graduations. She was proud of his accomplishments and shared her enthusiasm with others. After completing his term, Jack was promoted to Sergeant Major and reassigned to Camp Pendleton. Anna managed the company's regional offices in San Diego, and they stayed together. In 2011, Jack was deployed to Afghanistan for a year. Unbeknownst to him, his emotional farewell to his wife and daughter would be the last time he'd see them for 6 years. At the end of his service in 2012, he re-enlisted for another 6-year term. During this time, he faced a dangerous situation. After eliminating his target, he was surrounded by enemy forces. Fearing for his family's safety, he worried because these enemies didn't follow the rules for prisoners of war. Instead of being executed, he was locked in a crate and moved repeatedly. When not in transit, he endured physical beatings and torture. Despite his SEER training, escape seemed impossible. Jack kept searching for opportunities but remained trapped. He didn't know how long he'd been held but knew it was a significant amount of time. He listened for clues but learned nothing. His limited Arabic allowed him to pick up a few words and phrases. His captors spared his life because someone in the U.S. wanted him alive but out of danger. He also guessed he was not in the Middle East because of the dense green vegetation around him. Jack managed to escape from a small room, quietly slipping away with a rifle, ammunition, and a knife he took from one of the drunken soldiers. It took them a while to notice his absence, by which time he had covered several miles. After some fruitless searches, they gave up. Jack navigated the jungle, unsure of his exact location. Using the sun to guide him eastward, he survived mainly on leaves and insects, skills he had learned during his training. Occasionally, he caught small animals for sustenance. Days passed without seeing another person. When he finally spotted a road, he followed it cautiously, staying hidden. Jack continued, looking for signs that might reveal his whereabouts. He took breaks to eat and pulled out a small photo from his wallet, a picture of Anna and Sarah. He kissed it, put it back, and pressed on. Though he lost track of time and felt like giving up, the thought of his wife and daughter kept him moving. When exhaustion set in, he thought of them and found the strength to continue. He used the rainwater for cleaning and found shelter when he could. The terrain changed at times, but Jack kept heading east, always avoiding people. One day, he reached a town that looked large and modern. He waited until nightfall to enter, hoping to find the U.S. Embassy and seek asylum. His camouflage uniforms were ragged, his boots were worn through, and he looked weak and malnourished, a shadow of his former self. Fortunately, he still had his ID card and dog tags. When night fell, Jack stealthily entered the town and saw a sign indicating he was in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Knowing there was a U.S. embassy there, he proceeded cautiously. Spotting the building and the American flag, he approached the front gate but was stopped by a Marine guard. Showing his ID, he identified himself. The guard verified his ID and called someone inside. Soon, Jack was in a wheelchair, surrounded by Marines in dress uniforms, who escorted him inside. A consular officer gathered his information and fingerprints, confirming his identity, and quickly got him to a hospital. Due to his condition, his uniform was cut off, and he was washed, dressed in a gown, and placed in a hospital bed. Medical staff began administering water and medication through an IV in his arm, while others took blood samples and examined him thoroughly. "Mr. Thompson," the doctor said, "you arrived just in time. Another day or two, and you might not have made it. Just rest and relax. We will prepare you for transportation as soon as possible." The doctor left the room. Feeling better, Jack soon fell asleep. When he awoke, a clean-shaven man in a suit was in the room, reviewing some papers. Seeing Jack stir, the man focused on him. "How are you feeling, Gunnery?" the man asked. Jack nodded. "Better, thank you," he replied weakly. "Where am I now?" "You're in a hospital in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia," the man said. "What day is it?" Jack asked, rubbing his head. "It's October 15th, 2016, the man replied. "You've been missing for over 4 years. "For years?" Jack asked in disbelief. "That can't be." "Yes," the man said. "Do you remember where you were and who held you?" "Who are you?" Jack asked. The man smiled and showed his ID. "John Smith, Intelligence Liaison," he explained. "Can you tell me where you were and who captured you?" "Somewhere west of here, but I'm not sure who held me. I was passed around different groups. I heard different names, and I believe one of the groups was Boko Haram, but I'm not certain." "Can you describe the places you passed through, the vegetation, the terrain?" John asked. John took notes as Jack described as much of his journey as he could remember, nodding several times. "How did you survive?" John asked. "Thanks to SEER school," Jack said. John smiled. "I'll pass that along," he said. "Do you remember anything else, anything unusual?" "Yes," Jack said. "I remember hearing my captors talk about a benefactor. It seemed like someone wanted to keep me away but not kill me. I never understood it." John said, "We need to add this to the bigger picture and see what we get. Listen, Gunnery, your family has been informed that you're alive, and arrangements are being made for your return. As soon as the doctors here clear you, we'll transport you to Bethesda for rehabilitation. The good news is you're entitled to several years of back pay and a lot of leave." Jack smiled at this. "Thank you," he said. "You rest and relax, Gunnery. You're in good hands." Jack spent several months in the hospital until the doctors cleared him for travel. He had contracted several diseases during his ordeal and was severely malnourished. There was concern about Ebola, but the tests came back negative. While John didn't contact him again, intelligence officers interviewed him, and Marine guards brought him civilian clothes and a new uniform. Now clean and groomed, Jack was almost unrecognizable from his initial appearance. He slept most of the way to Bethesda. Upon arrival, he was surprised to find cards, messages, and flowers in his new room. He received greetings from his parents, Anna's parents, and Sarah, but his wife only sent a generic card with well wishes. At least she sent something, he thought. The following days were a blur of medical evaluations. Every part of his body was examined, blood was drawn, and various tests were conducted. He even underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The medical staff recommended a specific diet and a rigorous physical therapy regimen. He tried to contact Anna several times but always seemed to miss her. He managed to talk to Sarah and his parents, but Sarah avoided mentioning her mother, saying she was always busy with work. He learned that her father had retired 3 years ago and that Anna had taken over as CEO, spending a lot of time with Brad Jefferson, the chairman of the board. After 2.5 months, Jack was discharged. It had been 5 years since his capture and 6 years since he last saw his wife and child. He learned he had 150 days of accumulated leave and nearly $200,000 in back pay. He called Sarah, informing her he'd be home soon and would see her at the airport. As Jack looked out the airplane window, he wondered what awaited him. He had only received a card with well wishes from Anna and wondered if she had moved on. The plane landed in Los Angeles, and Jack disembarked with the other passengers, holding a small bag. After retrieving his duffel bag, he saw Sarah, who reminded him of Anna when they first met. Sarah's red hair swirled as she ran towards him with outstretched arms. "Daddy," she cried, hugging him tightly and kissing his face. His eyes filled with tears as he embraced her. "I missed you so much," she said. He looked at her, his voice thick with emotion. "I missed you too, Princess," he said. "Is your mother here?" Her eyes dropped as she shook her head. "No, Daddy, she's not. She's working, as always. Let's go to the car." Sarah tried to carry his duffel bag, but it was too heavy for her. A man in a chauffeur's black suit approached and took it from her. They loaded his belongings into the trunk, and Jack sat in the back seat with Sarah. "So, what's going on?" he asked. Sarah pulled out a small laptop and inserted a USB drive. "Mom's situation has changed," she explained. "You know she's the CEO now, right?" Jack nodded. "So, she's been spending time with Brad Jefferson, the chairman of the board?" Jack asked. "Yes, him," Sarah replied. "About 3 years ago, they started having lunches, then dinners. Now it's a serious relationship." "He's been with your mother for 3 years?" Jack asked. Sarah nodded. "Yes. I'm sorry, Daddy. I tried to tell her it was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. She's so different now. She used to be kind and fun, but now she's harsh," Sarah said. "She orders people around and treats them badly. She wasn't like this before. She changed after we learned you were missing, and your status was changed to unavailable. She went too far. I don't even recognize her anymore. I assured her you would return, but it seemed she didn't care. Then she started spending a lot of time with Brad. She brought him home, and I heard them laughing and having a good time in her room. I didn't like it," she said, starting to cry. Jack hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry, Princess. I wish I could have been here, Jack said, holding his daughter close. I understand, Dad, she replied. I did everything I could to get back at her, said Sarah. What? Sarah asked, puzzled. Well, some kids at school suggested I record some moments when Mom was home. So, with Mom's permission, I bought a few things online and set up some cameras in her room where she wouldn't notice them. I recorded a few videos. I only watched them briefly, they were too inappropriate for me. She turned on the laptop and accessed the USB drive, handing him a pair of headphones and playing the first video. Jack watched as Anna and Brad undressed in her room, becoming intimate. Feeling uncomfortable, Jack watched for a minute or two before turning off the video. That's enough, Dad. I'm sorry, Sarah said. It's not your fault, Princess, Jack reassured her. But you might want to listen to the videos from the last few weeks, Sarah suggested. Mom and Brad have been acting weird since they found out you were alive and coming back. They've been arguing a lot lately. Some of it doesn't make sense to me. She handed Jack a key. What's this? Jack asked. It's the key to your truck, Dad, she explained. When I found out you were coming home, I took your truck out of storage and had it repaired. It's in the garage. Jack smiled, remembering the 2010 Ford F-154x4 he had bought before his last tour. I thought you might need it. Mom kept up the registration and insurance, so it's all legal. Thanks, but I need more than a truck. I also need a place to stay. I can't live in the house with an unfaithful wife. Can I stay with you? Sarah asked. I don't like what Mom has been doing, and she hasn't been home much lately. She doesn't cook or do anything like she used to. She probably has someone else handling everything, Jack chuckled. Of course, you can stay with me if you want, Jack said. Sarah smiled and hugged him tightly. Thank you, Dad, she said. But you know the judge might make you stay with Mom, he cautioned. That's usually what happens in a divorce. So, you're going to divorce her? Sarah asked. I don't have a choice, he said, sighing. By this time, the car had pulled into a gated driveway and stopped in front of a large house with grand columns. My God, Jack said. You live here? Yes, Sarah said. Brad convinced Mom to buy it when she became CEO. I hate it here. They entered the house, and the driver handed Jack's bag to a man who met them at the front door. This way, sir, the man said, struggling with Jack's heavy bag. They climbed long, curving stairs reminiscent of something out of Gone with the Wind. Jack let the man struggle before following him to a door on the second floor. Madam said you should stay here, the man said. Jack took the bag from him and tossed it on the bed. He looked around, noting the room's sterile, high-end hotel feel. I won't be here long, Jack said, thanking the servant before leaving the room. He asked Sarah, which way to the master bedroom. Sarah led him down the hall and opened the double doors. Jack noted the absence of family photos and mementos. He found a legal folder in a drawer and, upon reading the documents, was shocked to see that Brad had convinced Anna to declare him dead. Fortunately, the documents hadn't been filed yet. The folder also contained a notarized copy of the prenuptial agreement he and Anna had signed years ago. He took the unfiled documents and left the room, with Sarah following him back to his assigned room. Discovering the intent to declare him dead felt like the ultimate betrayal. Where's my truck? He asked. I need to leave this place. What happened, Dad? She asked, concerned. Did you know Mom planned to declare me dead? Sarah shook her head. No, Dad, I didn't know, she said, astonished. How could she? I need to go, Jack said. I'm sorry, Sarah, but I can't stay here. Not even for a minute. I need to find a hotel and think things over. Will I see you again? She asked, tears in her eyes. Yes, I'll let you know where I am, he said. But I need to talk to your mother about this, and it won't be easy. I understand, Dad, she said. But before you go, I have a few things for you. She left the room and returned with a laptop bag, an envelope, and a smartphone. She handed him the phone. I got this so we could stay in touch, she explained. It has all the latest features, and I already activated it for you. Thanks, Princess, he said, appreciating the gesture. This will be very useful. You're welcome, she said. She handed him the laptop. You'll need this too. I programmed my number into it. He thanked her for the laptop. She then handed him the envelope. What's this? Jack asked. It's an invitation to a big work event. Mom will be out tonight, she explained. I can't stand being around her and Brad, so I thought you might want to come to my apartment. I heard the press will be there too. He opened the envelope and noted the time, 9 p.m. He smiled at the possibilities. Thanks again, he said. Now, where's my truck? I've got a lot to do. Follow me, she said. Jack gathered his belongings and followed his daughter down the stairs. The servant who had carried his bag stopped them. Sir, dinner will be served in 15 minutes, he announced. Will you be joining us? No, absolutely not, Jack replied firmly. The man's eyes widened at Jack's resolute response. What should I tell Madam? The servant asked. Tell her to kiss my ass, Jack said bluntly. Yes, sir. I'll let her know she can, quote, kiss your ass, the servant repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. Jack nodded, satisfied with the response. Let's go, he said, following his daughter out the back door and into the garage. He spotted his big blue truck next to a sleek Mercedes. For a moment, he considered scratching the Mercedes with his key but decided against it. He threw his belongings into the back seat of the crew cab and turned to his daughter. I'm sorry for everything, Dad, she said as he hugged her. Please stay in touch. I'll always be here for you. It's not your fault, he said softly. I'll call you once I figure out where I'm staying. And thanks for everything. I love you, Princess. I love you too, Dad, she replied. Jack got into the truck and started it. He smiled as the engine roared to life. He took one last look at his daughter before driving off. She smiled and waved as he left the garage. Jack chose a hotel with weekly rates and checked in. He brewed some coffee with the complimentary machine and began searching for a divorce lawyer. He arranged an appointment for later that day. He set up the laptop and plugged it in, setting aside the sheet of paper with Sarah's email address. After completing the setup, he created an email account and informed his daughter of his location. He inserted the USB drive Sarah had given him and reviewed the list of videos. Despite the emotional pain, he watched them, skipping most of the explicit content, looking for clues about Anna's behavior. In a recent video, Anna and Brad were arguing. Brad suggested they be intimate, but Anna refused, saying she wouldn't do it while Jack was alive and they were still married. Anna, visibly upset, retreated to the master bathroom and slammed the door. Brad took out his phone and made a call, speaking quietly enough that Jack could only hear part of the conversation. Mahmud, Brad said, I need you to do me a favor. You'll get paid once you finish the task. Don't look at me like that. I'm not the one who lost him. You had one job, keep Thompson out of circulation for 5 years. You didn't do it. Complete this, and you'll get the rest of the money I owe you. No, she has no idea about this. Stay away from her. Do you agree? I have to go. Just do it, all right? Goodbye. He ended the call just as Anna emerged from the bathroom. Jack paused the video, shocked by what he had heard. Was Brad Jefferson responsible for his captivity? Was Anna involved in this twisted game? Either way, she had betrayed him and had to face the consequences, but Brad had to answer for his actions. Jack copied the video to his laptop and prepared for his meeting with the lawyer. He changed out of his uniform into jeans and a polo shirt provided by Bethesda, packed everything up, and headed to the lawyer's office. Sally Clemens, a tough lawyer known for her fierce approach, greeted him. Jack initially doubted if he was in the right place, but Sally's expression softened when she saw him. "Are you going to leave, Mr. Thompson?" she asked. "Listen, Miss Clemens," Jack began, "my wife has been cheating on me for 3 years while I've been gone. I went through hell to return only to find out she also planned to declare me dead. All this advice won't change that. If you don't want to help me because I'm a man, say so now, and I'll find someone else." Her face softened a bit. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson," she said. "I don't represent cheaters, and in my experience, many who come to me think I'll help them fix their marriages. I assumed that's why you came." "You assumed without hearing me out," Jack said. "I think I'll find someone else." He started to leave, but she stopped him. "Please, Mr. Thompson," she said. "Let me see what you have." Jack sat back down, pulled out the USB drive, and handed her the folder with the prenuptial agreement and the unfiled declaration of death documents. She reviewed everything before returning to him. "How much is your wife worth?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "I have no idea," he said. "She's the CEO of Whitman Enterprises and lives in a huge house. I've been gone for years, so I don't know how much she's worth. Maybe millions." "Are you sure this isn't a ploy to get her money?" Sally asked, quickly realizing her mistake. "How dare you?" Jack growled. "I don't care about her money and never have. We had a great marriage until this man showed up. I have every reason to believe he's behind my situation. I just want a quick divorce based on the prenuptial agreement so I can move on." "Again, Mr. Thompson, I apologize," Sally said. "You mentioned you have a daughter. Do you want custody of her?" "Yes, and she wants to stay with me," Jack said. Sally said, "She's 16, so the judge might consider that, but realistically, getting custody will be tough. Courts usually favor the mother. Your military service might also be an issue. We might aim for joint custody, with your wife having physical custody and you having generous visitation." Jack agreed. "Yes, that's fine." Sally nodded. "When can we start the process?" "I can have the papers ready and serve her at work in 2 or 3 days," she said. "We'll base the filing on the prenuptial agreement. You know California is a no-fault state, so you can't file for divorce based on infidelity. Do you want any support from your wife?" Jack shook his head. "Okay," Sally said, "but I'll request that she covers attorney fees and court costs." "That's fine," Jack said. He paid a large retainer and left. On his way back to the hotel, he noticed a bar and grill and decided to stop in. Checking his watch, he realized he had a few hours before the evening event and was a bit hungry. He entered and ordered a burger and a soft drink. After eating, he sipped his drink, thinking about who to contact regarding Jefferson. He was certain Jefferson was responsible for his captivity. Looking around the bar, he noticed 2 men who seemed to be watching him. Both had darker skin tones, and one had a mass of unruly curls and a thick, single eyebrow. A voice next to him spoke as he raised his drink. "Hello, Gunny," said an older man with mostly gray hair parted slightly off-center. "How do you know I'm a gunnery sergeant?" Jack asked. The man tilted his head and smiled. "You just look like a gunny to me," he replied. Jack smiled back. "Maybe we should lose the uniform," he suggested. The man laughed. Jack extended his hand. "Jack Thompson, Gunnery Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps." The man shook his hand. "I know," he said. "Your TV appearance impressed me. Walking across equatorial Africa without a map, evading terrorists, and surviving off the land for 5 years. Your SEER instructor must have been exceptional. They were, Jack agreed. What brings you here? I'm not giving interviews if that's what you're after. The man smiled and showed his ID. Jack noticed a gun holstered in his jacket. Lee Gibson, NCIS. Can we talk privately? Jack nodded. Yes, I have a motel room nearby. Lee got off his bar stool. Lead the way, Gunny, he said. My truck is parked out back, Jack explained. Follow me and watch those two. They've been watching me since I came in. Lee explained that they had been watching him for a while. Follow me, and if they show up behind us, be ready. You're the boss, Jack said. Lee laughed. As they exited the bar, the two men stood and followed them outside. Lee noticed and addressed Jack. Think you can handle Curly? He asked. Jack nodded. Yes, no problem. As they approached Lee's SUV parked next to Jack's truck, he saw the reflection of the curly-haired man in the rear window. The man appeared to have a knife in his belt. As he prepared to attack, Jack sidestepped, crouched, and punched the man in the gut. The man doubled over, and Jack kneed him in the face, breaking his nose. The man dropped the knife and fell to the paved parking lot. Jack kicked him a few times in the groin before throwing the knife away. The man lay on the ground, groaning in pain. He noticed Lee talking on the phone while the other man was handcuffed. Moments later, another black SUV pulled up, and two men got out. One cuffed Curly while the other whispered to Lee. They loaded both men into the back seat of the SUV and drove off. Lee turned to Jack. Not bad for an old gunnery sergeant, he remarked. Jack smiled. I'll show you what old means. Lee got into his SUV and followed Jack to the motel. Jack made more coffee and poured Lee a cup. Lee grimaced as he took a sip. What's this stuff? He asked. They call it coffee, Jack replied. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to go to the store yet. So, what brings NCIS here? Do you know someone named Brad Jefferson? Lee asked. I know who he is, Jack explained, but I'm not familiar with him personally. I know he's the chairman of Whitman Enterprises. I suspect he's responsible for my captivity in Africa, but that's it. You might be right, Lee said. We've tracked several calls from him to known terrorists abroad and ISIS sympathizers in Los Angeles. We've also noticed several transactions between him and some suspicious Middle Eastern companies. Damn, Jack said. I have some videos that might interest you. What's on them? Lee asked. It's part of a conversation he had with someone named Mahmoud. I didn't hear the other side, Jack explained. He turned on his laptop and played the video of Brad's conversation with Mahmoud. Lee's eyes widened as he listened. Are there more videos? Lee asked. Yes, but I just got them and haven't had a chance to go through them all, Jack replied. I'm not sure if Brad was talking to Mahmoud or someone else. No problem, Lee said, pulling out a flash drive. Transfer them here, and my tech team will review them carefully. Jack noted, these videos were recorded in my wife's bedroom. Are you planning to divorce her? Lee asked. I just met with a lawyer. She's preparing the papers now, Jack said. I'm sorry, Jack, Lee said. Jack shook his head. It's not your fault, he said. From our conversation, I believe Anna didn't know about this. But her actions are still unacceptable. Lee nodded. I'll still need to talk to her. It might help her understand the gravity of her actions. I don't think she fully grasps it, Jack said. Lee smiled. I'll take care of it. He smiled. You're not a bad high school teacher. Emily smiled, pouring the rest of her lemonade down the sink and throwing the cup away. You might not say that once you start buying real lemonade, Emily laughed. Jake laughed. Do you think it's safe here, or should I find another place to stay? He asked. Emily replied, I think you'll be as safe here as anywhere. Just watch your back. I'll have a few friends watching you too, just in case. She handed him a phone. Call me if you need anything, anytime. Thank you, Jake said. He wrote his number on a small piece of paper and handed it to Emily, who tucked it into her pocket. I'll be in touch, Emily said, leaving. Jack sat with his coffee, reviewing the videos Sarah had given him. His heart ached as he watched. How could she do this to him? He wondered. In the background, he heard Anna and Brad discussing declaring him dead and the implications for Sarah. He couldn't help but notice Brad's satisfied expression during the conversation. However, Anna didn't seem concerned with the issue. As the evening approached, Jack prepared for the social event he was to attend. He showered, shaved, and decided to wear his class A uniform. After adjusting his uniform and tilting his cap slightly, he took the invitation Sarah had given him and left the house. He parked in the hotel parking lot for the event. He entered the building, removed his cap, and showed his invitation to the doorman. Jack walked in and saw Anna and Brad. Her hair was darker and shorter, and she had new wrinkles around her eyes and mouth. Anna called out to Jack as he approached. So now it's Jack, he asked sarcastically. She turned to Brad for support. Jack walked up to him and noticed that he was at least 3 inches taller than Anna's lover. He approached as if he were about to drill a recruit, standing nose to nose with him, forcing him to look up. Jack extended his hand, and Brad took it. Jack squeezed it with such force that Brad gasped in pain. So, you're Brad Jefferson, Jack said. You're the one who's been spending time with my wife for the past 3 years, he continued loudly, causing the surrounding people to gasp in surprise. If I could take a minute to talk to my wife, that would be great, Jack requested. Anna intervened. Jack, please go back to the house, and we'll talk later, she said, trying to dismiss him as if he were one of her subordinates. Jack's eyes filled with rage, and Anna had never seen him like this before. All right, fine, he replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The surrounding people quickly stepped back. I am not your servant, and you cannot just order me around, he added. She stepped back, surprised by his tone. Jack took her by the elbow and led her aside. Jack, are you causing a scene? She whispered. Please, not here. Why not? Jack asked. Are you embarrassed to be called out by your own husband? He looked at her left hand and saw that she wasn't wearing her wedding or engagement rings. You should be. You can't even bring yourself to wear the rings I gave you. Is that why you decided to hook up with this guy and declare me dead? Yes, I know all about it. Sorry, but the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Anna blushed as she looked down at the floor. Do you remember what I told you about Semper Fidelis and the importance of loyalty? He asked. She nodded. So, you know what? When you chose to be with him, you became a traitor to me. You became my enemy. Her eyes widened in shock. And you know what I do with my enemies? Jack, please think twice before you do something. Brad is a very influential man who can cause you trouble, she explained. Jack laughed in her face. You have no idea what you're talking about. Who do you think kept me imprisoned all these years? Her eyes widened. He wasn't sure if Brad was responsible for his captivity, but he wanted to see her reaction. It seems you've forgotten that I'm a United States Marine. I don't back down from challenges. You're no longer part of my life, and I'll be filing for divorce soon. He pulled out the photo he carried with him across Africa and handed it to her. This helped me during my journey through Africa, he explained. When I was cold, tired, hungry, and sick, the thought of a loving wife and daughter waiting for me at home gave me the strength to keep going. I still have a daughter, so maybe 1 out of 2 isn't so bad. He took off his wedding ring and handed it to her. What do you want me to do with it? she asked. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't care, he said. Do whatever you want with it. When you get the papers, sign them to finalize this. She cried as he turned to leave. He heard her calling after him, but he kept walking, a single tear rolling down his cheek. Furious, he went to a local bar to escape his problems. He ordered a glass of wine, finished it, and ordered another. After a few glasses, Lee and another man joined him at the bar, sitting on either side. We saw you talking to your wife, Lee said. How are you feeling? Not great, Jack replied. Lee nodded. I've been through tough times too. My first marriage ended in disaster, and I've been divorced twice since. It's hard, but things can get better. Yeah, I could use some good news, Jack said, taking a sip of his drink. Those two men who attacked you today confessed everything, Lee said. They revealed that Brad ordered them to attack you and paid for your capture. They failed, of course. They also confirmed Brad's involvement. We're following other leads and plan to interrogate Brad and your wife tomorrow. Are those two still in custody? Jack asked. Absolutely, Lee replied. We have some agents keeping an eye on you just in case. You might see them protecting you. We might have more questions for you after the interrogation. Why would he go to such lengths? Jack wondered. He wanted your wife, that's all, Lee explained. We don't believe she had any role in his plans. My gut tells me no, but I haven't spoken to her yet, he replied. I'll know for sure after I talk to her. Jack finished his drink and ordered another. Lee watched him take a sip. I think you've had enough for tonight, he said. All right, Jack replied. He quickly finished the drink and smashed his glass on the bar, signaling for another. The bartender stopped when Lee raised his hand. Time to go, Gunny, Lee said. Let my partner drive you back to the motel. Jack thought about arguing with Lee but instead handed his keys to Lee's partner. Good decision, Gunny, he said. I'm not drunk. Just tired, Jack said. Lee's partner drove Jack back to the motel and helped him inside. I'll pick you up tomorrow afternoon, Lee said. Jack nodded. He took off his uniform and went to bed. The next day, Jack had breakfast and then stopped at a store for coffee, 6 bottles of beer, some sodas, and a few snacks. His phone rang as he was returning to the motel. Dad, are you okay? Sarah asked. Yes, Princess. Why? Jack asked. Mom was very upset when she came home last night, Sarah said. I've never seen her cry like that. Was Brad with her? Jack asked. No, he wasn't, Sarah said. What happened last night? I introduced myself to your mother and her friend and had a nice chat with her, Jack said. Whatever you said, it got to her, Sarah said. Good, Jack said. Maybe she'll realize what a big mistake she made. Keep me posted, Dad, she said. I don't like what she did either, but I don't want her to be hurt. Don't worry, Princess, he said, ending the call. Lee arrived earlier that day and picked up Jack, taking him to the NCIS headquarters. Anna and her lover were to be interrogated. Jack watched from an observation room as Anna was brought in, seated, and given a bottle of water. She didn't look happy but had no choice. Finally, Lee entered the room and sat across from her. Why am I here? Anna asked defiantly. Lee opened a folder and laid out 3 photos in front of her. 2 of them were pictures of the men who attacked Lee and Jack, and the third was a photo of Jack when he arrived at the embassy in Addis Ababa. Anna recoiled when she saw the photo. What happened? Lee said. Don't you recognize your husband? Is that a picture of Jack? She asked, stunned. Lee nodded. Yes, that's what he looked like when he arrived at the embassy in Addis Ababa after a long journey. Based on his descriptions, we estimate he walked about 2,500 miles. We believe he was somewhere in Ghana when he escaped his captors, Lee said. If he had stayed another day or two, he probably wouldn't have survived. Anna started to cry. I have to decide whether to charge you as an accomplice to his kidnapping or attempted murder, Lee said. Or both, combined with aiding and abetting known terrorists. Anna was shocked. I didn't do anything like that. Lee said, your partner did. He paid those two to attack and capture your husband. They failed, of course. They also confirmed Brad's involvement. You planned to declare your husband dead, didn't you? Anna hesitated before answering. Only because Brad said it was necessary. No one knew where he was for almost 5 years, and you planned to marry Brad after the court declared your husband dead, Lee asked. Yes, Anna said. What happened when he divorced his wife? Anna's eyes filled with tears. Lee looked at her. So, as he explained, you started a relationship with Brad Jefferson after you became CEO. People think you planned to marry him after the court declared your husband dead and finalized the divorce. But we have to believe that you didn't know Brad paid for the kidnapping and detention of your husband for 5 years, or possibly ordered your husband's murder. Is that correct? Anna started crying. You have to believe me, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know Jack was kidnapped or there was an attempt on his life. Lee shook his head. I only believe what the evidence shows, he said. Brad has already pointed to you, claiming it was your idea. Anna's eyes flashed with anger. That's not true. You know it. I love my husband, she said. I would never do that to him. But you cheated on him. Lee said. Yes, I slept with Brad, and I'm sorry for that. But Brad claimed Jack was probably dead, she said. I would never have betrayed Jack if I knew he was still alive. I waited about 2 years and heard nothing from you. I didn't know what to think. Lee stared at her for a few minutes, eyes narrowed. Finally, he stood up. I believe you, Mrs. Thompson, he said. So I'm not going to file charges right now. Maybe later, after I review all the evidence. Your boyfriend, however, won't be so lucky. I recommend staying in the area in case we need to talk to you again. He stood up and left the room. Anna hung her head, crying. A moment later, Brad entered the room. He approached Anna and put his hand on her. She jumped from her chair and punched him, knocking him to the floor. Anna, please, Brad began. She kicked him in the genitals, making Jack smile. Shut up, you dirty man, Anna said. I just pray to God that Jack forgives me for making a mistake. Lee opened the door and lifted Brad from the floor, his hands cuffed behind his back. He smiled at Anna before turning off the light as he left, allowing her to see Jack through the one-way observation glass. For the second time in as many days, Jack turned and walked away, leaving Anna crying behind him. The next day, Anna was served with divorce papers at her office. Sally called him. Hello, Jack, she said. I just wanted to let you know that Anna came to see me today. She signed the divorce papers and won't contest anything. She also left something for you to pick up. It looks like a very large check. She asked me to tell you that you can see Sarah whenever you want. She resigned as CEO of Whitman Enterprises effective immediately and is putting her house up for sale. I filed everything, so you'll be a free man in 6 months. Free, Jack said with regret. Yeah, right. I guess I should be a happy man, but I'm not. Jack, I know she hurt you badly, but I believe she still loves you, Sally said. You can still cancel this if you reconcile. She says you haven't heard her side of all this. Maybe you should just get closure. I'll think about it, he replied. Thanks for all your help. He ended the call and went to a local cafe for coffee. As he sat over his second cup, Lee arrived. Jack bought him a coffee, and they talked a bit about their daily lives. I heard your wife was served today, Lee remarked. Yeah, Jack replied. I guess I should be a happy man, but I'm not. Life goes on, Gunny, Lee said. I believe Anna was as much a victim as you were. I'll stop by when I finish my investigation. They had another coffee before Lee spoke again. You have orders for the office tomorrow. You've been assigned as an instructor at the Scout Sniper School in Pendleton and promoted to Master Sergeant. Jack looked at the new chevrons and nodded. I'll be there early tomorrow. He went to Sally's office and picked up the envelope Anna had left earlier. Inside was a cashier's check with many zeros and a business card. Anna recommended you contact a good financial advisor to help you with this, and I tend to agree. Jack nodded. Don't worry. Anna will still be fine financially. She still has 30% and the money from the trust. Plus, she gets a small dividend from the company still owned by her father. Thanks, Jack said. Why the long face, Jack? She asked. You should be celebrating. You won. But at what cost? He asked. Anna was my life. She helped me survive my experience in Africa. Everything I did was for her. Now all that's gone. Well, not entirely, Sally replied. You still have 6 months. If you really care about her, things can change. Easier said than done, Jack replied. Sally just shook her head in response. Maybe you should call her, she suggested. At least think about it. I'll think about it, he agreed. After returning to the motel, he called Sarah. Hi, Dad, she said. How are you feeling? Not great. Want to grab a burger somewhere? Sure, she replied. When do you want to meet? How about right now? He asked. I'll be waiting for you, she said. Jack got into his truck and picked up Sarah. Fortunately, Anna wasn't home. They drove to the nearest In-N-Out for a burger and a soda. After dinner, they visited a nearby park. I'll be heading to Camp Pendleton soon, Jack said. I'll get my orders tomorrow and then probably head out. I don't see any reason to stay here anymore. What will you be doing there? Sarah asked. I'll be the new instructor at the Scout Sniper School, he replied. For how long? She asked. I don't know, he replied. Probably around 3 years. Will you still go overseas? Sarah asked. Jack shrugged. I don't know. Not anytime soon, he noted. You can always visit me whenever you want. She smiled. I'd prefer you to be with us full-time, she explained. He nodded. Me too, Princess, he said. I agree. When are you leaving? She asked. In a few days, he said. After I get my new chevrons sewn on my uniforms. I'm being promoted to Master Sergeant. Congratulations, she said. Thank you, he replied, smiling. Listen, Camp Pendleton isn't that far. We can meet up whenever you want. I'd like that, Dad, she replied. You know, Mom still loves you. Yeah, I've heard that, he said. Do you still love her? She asked. Yes, I probably always will, he admitted. I hate what she did, and I'm not sure I can trust her again. I remember you saying people deserve a second chance after making a mistake, she noted. Don't you think Mom deserves that too? Your mother went much further, he said. It will take a long time for me to get over what she did. I understand, Sarah said. I just hate that you two are apart. So do I, Sarah, he said. After spending more time with his daughter, he took her home, relieved that Anna was still not back. He returned to his lodging and ended the day. The next day, he visited Lee, who had his orders and promotion certificate. Congratulations, Master Sergeant, Lee said, reading the certificate. I'll be in touch. The investigation is almost complete, and I'll let you know what I find. Thanks, Lee, Jack said. For everything. He took his uniforms to the dry cleaners and had the new chevrons sewn on. He spoke with the financial advisor Anna recommended and asked him to handle the money as he saw fit. The financial advisor seemed surprised but said he would do as Jack asked. A day later, he arrived at Pendleton and checked in, taking on his new role as an instructor at the Scout Sniper School. He enjoyed his new job and teaching the young Marines, but the absence of Anna weighed heavily on him. It felt like a significant part of his life was missing. He used to share all this with her, but she was no longer there to inspire him. Over 2 months, Jack called Sarah almost every other day. He learned that Anna had received an offer to buy her house and was considering buying a condo in San Diego. Brad was facing federal charges for collaborating with terrorists, conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and supporting America's enemies, which could lead to a life sentence. Anna's father, the former CEO of Whitman Enterprises, returned to work and offered her a future leadership position, which she declined. A month later, Sarah called Jack in a panic, informing him that her mother was in the hospital. What happened? He asked. She tried to commit suicide, Sarah said. Please come and see her. All right, Jack said. I'm on my way. Where is she? She's at Scripps La Jolla Hospital, she replied. Please hurry, Dad. Jack put on his coat and rushed out, getting into his car and driving as fast as he could to the hospital. When he arrived, he found Sarah in the waiting room, crying. What happened? He asked, hugging Sarah. I came home from school and found her in bed, she explained. There was a bottle of sleeping pills and a bottle of whiskey. She was holding your photo and unresponsive. I called 911, and they took her here. I should have seen this coming, Dad. I'm sorry. It's all right, Jack said. It's not your fault. They'll take good care of her. His daughter sighed. Dad, since you left, all she does is drink and cry. She doesn't cook, clean, or do anything anymore. She barely eats. It seems she's lost the will to live. Can't you forgive her, Dad? She's miserable without you, and so am I. Jack hugged his daughter for a few minutes before approaching the nurse's station to find out what he could. Are you her husband? They asked. I am her husband, though we're separated. What's her condition? Jack asked. The nurse hesitated but presented information about Anna. She's in a room, doctor, they said. I'm coming, Dr. Smith said, approaching. I'm Dr. Smith. Are you Anna Thompson's husband? Jack nodded. Yes, I am. Dr. Smith informed Jack that his wife was stable after most of the sleeping pills were removed from her stomach. She would be under observation and evaluation, with recommended counseling. He was allowed to see her, though she would be groggy for some time. Jack was surprised by her frailty and paleness but relieved to see that she was still wearing her wedding rings. He closed his eyes and cried, praying for her recovery. Sarah hugged him, and they both cried. Why do we live? Jack whispered, his voice cracking. Why did you do this? Please, don't die. I don't want to lose you like this. After a few hours, he felt Anna move and heard her weak voice. Jack, she asked. Is it really you? He looked into her eyes, tears welling up. He kissed her and held her close. Yes, Anna, it's me, he said softly. I'm really here. They cried together, holding each other tightly. Anna pulled away slightly. I'm sorry, Jack, she said. I never got the chance to explain. Will you ever forgive me? He kissed her gently and placed his finger on her lips. We'll talk later, he whispered. Right now, just focus on getting better, okay? She nodded. Please stay with me. I'll stay, he assured her, hugging her frail body close. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. He stayed by Anna's side all day and most of the night until Sarah came to take his place. You should probably take a break and get a shower, Sarah suggested. How is she doing? That sounds good, he replied. She's improving. I think she'll be okay, but yes, a shower would be great. She won't be truly okay until you two are together, Sarah said. She's been struggling since, well, you know. Jack nodded. Yes, I know. He sat next to Anna and held her hand. I'll be back, okay? She squeezed his hand. I promise I'll be back, he said. He went to his room, took a shower, and changed clothes. He called his superior to give an update. His commander said, "Take care of your wife. You have leave time, so don't come back until she's home." Jack agreed and returned to the hospital. Anna's eyes lit up. "You're back," she said. "I told you I would be back," he said. They spent the next day discussing what had happened while he was captive. "That NCIS guy said you walked about 2,500 miles across Africa," she said. "That must have been hard." "Yes, it was," he said. "I still have nightmares about it." She frowned. "I'm sorry, Jack," she said. "I didn't know Brad had you captured. Why did he do it, and why did you go along with declaring me dead?" Jack asked. "He wanted to end his marriage," Anna explained. "He convinced my father to retire early and helped me get a promotion at work. After we heard about your capture, my promotion was approved. Brad started mentoring me, taking me out to lunch. I knew he wanted more, but I refused his advances. He backed off but kept pushing. I missed you but felt good having someone care about me. For 2 years, I heard nothing from the military. Then one night, he convinced me to drink, and it happened for the first time. After almost 4 years of your absence, he suggested declaring you dead. He believed with your absence, I'd get your insurance payout, and he could use it to divorce his wife." "Wow," Jack said. "That would be around $400,000. So he planned to use it for his divorce?" Anna nodded. "He said his wife would take everything in the divorce, and he'd need it to survive until we got married." "And you were going to give it to him?" Jack asked. "I wasn't thinking rationally," Anna admitted. "I had enough for myself, and I considered your insurance money dirty. I wouldn't feel right taking it. I also thought of using it for Sarah's college and mentioned it, but he didn't like that idea." "Did you ever stop seeing him?" Jack asked. "Yes," Anna replied. "I ended the relationship as soon as I found out you were alive. I told him as long as we were still married, I wouldn't be with him. He didn't like that. I believed you were dead, and no one told me otherwise. So much time had passed, and everyone said the chances of you being alive were slim." Jack listened carefully. "I understand," he said. "But why the distant behavior when I came back? And why did you put me in a separate room when I came home?" "I was shocked," Anna said. "I didn't believe you were really alive. I had to see and talk to you first before I could accept it. Then there was Brad. Please, Jack, you don't know the pressure he put on me. And then when I saw you that night, I realized it was real." She cried before continuing. "The look on your face when you first confronted me, I had never seen that look before. And the way you talked to me scared me," she said. "I realized then I had made a huge mistake. I don't want to see that look again. You didn't let me explain anything. You had already made up your mind. That's why you didn't fight the divorce," Jack said. Anna nodded. "I knew it was hopeless. You had the prenuptial agreement, and you had all the evidence," she said. "Even though I was deceived by that man, I was in the wrong, so I stepped back. As you say, a tactical retreat. You and I lost. We both lost our lives," Jack said. "But you still have your career in the Marine Corps." "Yes, but it means nothing without you to share it with," he said. Anna began to cry, her body trembling as she sobbed. He held her tightly. I'm sorry, Jack, she cried. I missed you so much. Please, Jack, tell me you forgive me. Tears streamed down his face as he thought about everything she had said. I forgive you, Anna, he said through his tears. Anna cried even harder, hugging him as tightly as she could. They continued talking throughout the day, reminiscing about their life. Eventually, the doctor entered the room to inform Anna that her tests were good and she could leave the hospital. Jack called Sarah to let her know she didn't need to come to the hospital. Thanks, Dad, she replied. I'll cook dinner for you when you get home. The concept of home weighed heavily on Jack's mind. The hospital transferred Anna to the patient drop-off area, where Jack waited in his truck. He helped her into the truck, buckled her seatbelt, and drove her to her condo. Jack helped Anna into the elevator and escorted her to the front door. He was surprised when he entered the condo. It looked just like it had when they lived together, filled with family photos and reminders of his military service. I hope you like it, Anna said. I wanted to be surrounded by happy memories. I definitely approve, he replied. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, removing an apron. Dinner is ready, she announced, mimicking the servant from her mother's estate in Los Angeles. They entered the dining room and saw a table set for two, with lit candles, chilled wine, and a covered dish. Sarah seated them and uncovered the main dish, revealing a large lasagna. She served them and poured each of them a glass of wine. Where's your plate, princess? Jack asked. Sarah smiled in response. This is your dinner, she said. I'm going out with friends. See you later. She kissed them on the cheek and left. You two behave, she said with a smile as she left. Our daughter has really grown up, Jack said. Yes, she has, Anna replied. She raised her glass and proposed a toast. To us, she said. Jack smiled and joined the toast. They ate the lasagna Sarah had prepared and cleared the table. Anna turned to Jack. Would you like to stay for dessert? She asked with a smile. Dessert sounds great, he said. What did you have in mind? She took his hand and led him down the hall to the living room. This, she said, warmly embracing him. Jack felt a familiar sense of comfort. She broke the embrace and went to her dresser. She opened her jewelry box, took something out, and handed it to him. I believe this is yours, she said. She took his left hand and placed his wedding ring back on his finger, then hugged him again. Till death do us part, she said. He smiled and watched as she changed into pajamas. You're wearing too much for what I have in mind, she whispered. After she undressed, she knelt before him and hugged his legs. Jack felt a familiar sense of arousal. They exchanged loving glances, enjoying each other's company. As their connection deepened, Jack felt the need to express his love. I'm so grateful for this moment with you, he said. Anna smiled and continued their embrace. Together they shared a moment of connection that left them feeling satisfied and fulfilled. After their intimate moment, they shared tender kisses and embraces. Jack's renewed energy and passion left them both feeling connected and content. After spending a long time together, they fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, Jack woke up to find Anna still holding him. He looked at the clock and considered getting up, but Anna asked him to stay. For once, you're on leave, she said. You can always call them and say you've been captured by a wild woman who won't let you go until you give her 1,000,000 hugs. That sounds crazy enough to work, Jack said, smiling. Anna hugged him. I'm serious, she said. We have 6 years to make up for. So, are we reconciling? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, if you want to, she said. Jack smiled and nodded. I want to, he said. I'll call Sally in the morning and ask her to file the papers. I have an idea. What is it? She asked. How about we renew our wedding vows? He suggested. You mean, get married again? She asked. He nodded. Yes, he said. In a church, like we did before. What do you say? Will you marry me again? She thought for a moment, then smiled. Yes, Jack Thompson, I will marry you again, she said. Yes, they heard from the doorway. They turned, surprised to see Sarah jumping up and down, clapping her hands. Thankfully, they were still under the covers when Sarah ran into the room and hugged and kissed them both. Can I be your maid of honor? She asked Anna. Please. Of course, Anna said, prompting another round of celebratory cheers. A month later, Jack and Anna renewed their wedding vows. Jack's parents flew in from Texas, and Anna's parents came from Los Angeles. During the ceremony, Jack pulled out the divorce papers he had received from Sally and dramatically tore them in half, then took the remnants and tore them again, tossing the shredded papers into the air, prompting applause from everyone in the church. During the reception, Anna leaned over to Jack. Where do you want to go on our second honeymoon? She asked. Jack pulled out some tickets. I thought we could take a nice cruise somewhere, maybe to Europe, he said. Anna looked surprised. These are first-class tickets, she said. How did you get them? Jack smiled, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to her. She looked at him, puzzled. The Jack and Anna Thompson Reconciliation Fund, she read. What is this? He smiled. It's what I did with the check you gave Sally for me, he said. She still looked puzzled. You mean? She began. Yes, he said. All I ever wanted was that sweet red-headed girl I fell in love with in Balboa Park so long ago. She smiled and hugged him tightly. Well, I'm glad you used it for good, she said. They returned from their trip tired but happy and more in love with each other than ever before. A few days after returning to work, Jack saw Anna waiting for him. We need to talk, she said. Jack thought this couldn't be good. What happened? He asked, sitting down. She sat on his lap and hugged him. I'm pregnant, Master Sergeant Thompson, she said, and it's all your fault, she added with a smile. Jack's face lit up as he hugged and kissed his wife. 9 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Jonathan Travis Thompson, after their fathers. Sarah was thrilled to finally be a big sister. I wonder if he'll go into the family business, Jack mused. I really hope not, Anna said with a smile. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed this tale, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story you want to share about yourself or someone else, please feel free to reach out to me. Take care.